This video presentation is brought to you by America's Promise Ministry, a national Christian outreach ministry which has been teaching and proclaiming the Jacob Israel Truth message for over 23 years. We are proud to present this special presentation.
Ready to introduce Dick, and it was there that I had the privilege of listening to him discuss investment portfolios and things that I never knew about economy. Well, Dick was born in Lynchburg, Virginia, and I think in coming to this particular group of identity believers, he wasn't sure what he was getting into, but it happened to be New Beginnings with Eldon Purvis, and I know that there was a lot of soul searching and a lot of things that were uttered there that were new to me, and I think also to him. But he was born in Lynchburg, Virginia, and listen, his speech will betray you. He's a Galilean. And he attended Hampton-Sydney and William and Mary College. He graduated from Lynchburg College in Lynchburg, Virginia. He's been active since the 1950s in states' rights groups, and he trained in New York and Old Francis I. DuPont and in brokerage business. He's been a stockbroker for 21 years, and he works with Anderson Stanwyck, and he's a member of New York Stock Exchange. He married his wife Ann at Lynchburg, and he has 6 children. And we could go on with a list of credits, but I think that's enough. Make him feel welcome as he comes and shares with us a message today.
Thank you. It's a real pleasure being here. I feel like I know most of you, but it's the first time I've ever spoken to you. I'm going to talk to you about food today. But before I talk to you about food, I want to talk to you about sleep. I wake up 5 o'clock every morning. Been doing it for years. Have to get to work at 6. This morning I woke up at 5 o'clock, and guess what? I was blind. It was 5 o'clock back in Virginia. It's only 2 o'clock here. And there wasn't a light shining anywhere. And I thought, sure, I'd been struck blind, you know? It took me a little, after you wake up at 2 o'clock, all ready to tackle the world, what do? Walk around in the dark for a little while, come in and read the Bible, and then try to go back to sleep. It's been an experience for me so far. Now, I want to talk to you about my speech. My speech is not a brogue. It's how everyone should speak. Back there in 1715, and again in 1745, Scotland fought wars with England. And the English really got upset over it. And they took the Scottish prisoners of war by the thousands, and put chains around their necks and put them in prison ships and sent them to Virginia and sold them into slavery, 7-year indenture, because you can only sell an Israelite for 7 years, no more. Now, my granddaddy came into Yorktown with a chain around his neck, George Hume, and his cousin was the governor of the state of Virginia. And he sent word up to his cousin that he was down there and he'd appreciate if he'd buy his indenture, and he did. Set him up in business. It's nice to have kinfolk. Goes a lot further than hard work, I found out. Now, it's something interesting about the Scottish prisoners of war. Many of you right here are descended from these Scottish prisoners of war. Back in Scotland, the people were very poor, because it's a poor country, to those of you who visited there. But the chiefs, clan chiefs, prided themselves on educating the people, educating the clansmen. And they brought in the best teachers from all over the world. And there was nothing unusual at all for a little Scottish sheep herder way up there on the side of a mountain. And boy, the mountains over there, how you get up there, you know, it's a wonder. And he would know his Latin, his Greek, his Hebrew, and could do his numbers. And people didn't think anything about it at all. And all of a sudden, Virginia and Nova Scotia, New Scotland, and South Carolina, and all these places received thousands of these prisoners who knew a whole lot more than the plantation owners. So they pulled them in out of the cornfields and the cotton fields and tobacco fields real fast and put them in schoolhouses. And they taught Tom Jefferson, George Washington, Patrick Henry, Latin, Greek, Hebrew, taught them to do their numbers, and taught them to say there's a mouse about the house and there's no doubt about it. And they also taught them to hate the guts out of the English. Now, the way you could tell a Tory, now a Tory is pro-English, and a patriot was easy. A patriot said, there's a mouse about the house and there's no doubt about it. And a Tory would say, there's a mouse about the house and there's no doubt about it. And how somebody can get their tongue around that, I just don't understand. My children, when they come home with that nonsense, I'll whip that out of them right away. None of my children will do anything like that. But I just wanted to say that if as many of you that can pick up the correct accents while I'm here, I think it will stand you in good stead as, you know, as the camp goes along. I was born into a Virginia family that's God-fearing family. We had a scripture reading every day, and Bible reading and prayers. And I grew up just assuming that, you know, I was a Christian, and whatever that meant. I got to college, and I had one or two real good Bible teachers at college of the old school. And then I got a Bible teacher who had been a missionary to China, who was an atheist. And he did a job on me. He made fun out of all the miracles in the Bible, and he really did a job on me. And by the time I came out of school, I was what they call an agnostic. I went to work up in Richmond, Virginia, and all of my friends who were interested in politics then were atheists. I became an atheist. And it wasn't until much, much later, well, as a matter of fact, I had a number of problems. I'd had a nervous breakdown. I was an alcoholic. My wife and I, we lived together for over a year, but not as man and wife. And we had lots of problems. And with a nervous breakdown, you see, this is old tough Dick Hoskins. I used to fight in the ring, and I used to take on all comers if they wanted it, although I never went out looking for trouble. And I had absolutely no tolerance at all for any type of weakness. But boy, if you've ever had a nervous breakdown, you can't do anything, including sweeping floors. And I could do a lot of things. But the time would come when someone would ask me a question that I couldn't answer. And boy, I just came unglued. And 10 minutes a day was all I could work. Well, you can't very well make a living on 10 minutes a day. And I figured that I had enough money left in the house in reserve if I sold the furniture in the house, although I didn't know people didn't want to buy the furniture. I just assumed they would. I had enough to last me for maybe 2 or 3 weeks. And I figured I'd take my pistol and shoot myself. And I remember I was sitting in my green rocking chair on the front porch of my house, and I said, well, General Robert E. Lee, he placed a great deal of emphasis on this God fella, and I know my mother does, and I know General Washington did, and a lot of great people did in the past. I said, now I don't know that there's anything to it, and I really don't believe that there is a God. But if there is, I'll tell you what I'll do. I'll try to make a bargain with you. You let me work a full day, and I'll try to believe. Now, I didn't hear any bells ringing, and nobody threw any switches or anything, but I didn't see any fireworks. But I'd give them a word of honor. And in lots of places in America, that means a great deal. So I tried to learn about this God fella. And the only way I knew to find out about him was to look in the Bible and start reading. And oh, goodness gracious, I'd read this thing, get straight with all the people you got trouble with. Well, I had a list of people that long I was having trouble with, and I had to get all of that straight, and it was one thing after another thing. It was a very humbling experience, just getting to know God, But I'll tell you, it really took. I started, my promise was also, if you would let me work, and by the way, he started letting me work. I had to lie down 10 minutes out of every hour, flat on my back, and count the little spots in the ceiling to take my mind off my work. And in the middle of the day, I had to lie down flat one solid hour. It didn't make any difference if someone was sitting at my desk or not. I had to take off. But gradually, I became stronger and stronger and stronger. And now I can work 10 hours a day. Although I don't like to, I can do it. And I work more and do more than I've ever done before in my life. So the Lord really does answer prayers. Now, I hunted around for a church to go to. I ended up at a place called Thomas Road Baptist Church after a year. And I went there for 18 years. And of course, I read something about usury in the Bible. And I sold bonds. That was part of I sold a lot of bonds. Millions and millions and millions of dollars worth of bonds. In fact, that was half of my income was bond income. But the Bible said here about usury. And I read, my pastor's name was Jerry Falwell. And I called him up. I said, Jerry, I'm having some trouble with something in the Bible. Could I talk to you? He said, all right, Dick, I'll come right on down. So he came on down to the office, and we talked. I read this part. He said, he that putteth not out his money to usury, nor taketh reward against the innocent, he that doeth these things shall never be moved. I said, now, Jerry, you mean I'm not supposed to take usury? He said, is that what the Bible said? I said, yeah, that's exactly what he said. He says, then you're not supposed to. I said, all right, I'll stop it. And the next fellow that called up wanted to buy some bonds. I told him, I'm real sorry, I can't sell them to you. You'll have to go somewhere else. And that went $500 commission right down the drain just like that. So my income dropped way off, I'll tell you. But I was struggling along on, what was left of it. When I read in the newspaper that Thomas Rhodes was selling $8 million worth of bonds out someplace in the Midwest. And that really upset me. Now, if it's not right for me to sell bonds, how come it's all right for the church to sell bonds? Unless you're saved by grace to go out and do anything you want to do. Now, I had not looked at it that way before. And somehow or another, it just didn't hang right with me, So I kind of had a little falling out with Thomas Rhodes. Now, don't get me wrong, I like Jerry. I think he's an awfully nice fellow in many respects. But the rules and the laws are for all of Israel. And there is no exception. Everyone is supposed to go by the law, right straight by the law. And there's no room for someone to stand up and be an adulterer, a usurer, a liar, a robber, or anything else by any other name. If you love me, keep my commandments. That's the name of the game. Now, my job is a real interesting type of job. And I think it's a very useful type of job. I went up to New York and I was trained by Francis I. DuPont to manage portfolios. Now, I came back to Lynchburg, and that day and time, everybody wanted a hot stock account. Somebody with $5,000 or $10,000 who really wanted to, have a fling. And airline stocks, they were hot then, and uranium stocks, they were hot then. Well, all of these portfolios that had a sizable amount of money, they didn't want to fool with because it took a lot of work and there's really not that much activity in these type of portfolios. So they gave it to the portfolio manager from New York, brand new. And I came to Lynchburg and I got all these accounts and it took up all my time, and I almost starved to death. It was a bad, bad time for me. So I told them, I said, now look, I'm going to get paid for this or I'm going to quit. So they let me get paid for it. Now this is important because you're going to find widows and orphans, widows who never handled money before in their life. Their husband dies and leaves them $200,000 or $300,000 worth of insurance. Or the husband sells his business and he's got $300,000 or $400,000 he never had before. What does he do with it? Usually he puts it in a building and loan. And you've been reading in the newspapers about what's been happening to various building and loans across the country. Or he'll split it and put it part of it in the bank. You've been reading what's been happening to various banks across the country. Or he'll put it or turn it over to a bank management, a trust department at the bank. And, well, after a long period of time, then they'll come to see me. And it'd be my job to try to straighten things out at that point in time. But that has been my job through the years. I try to invest in companies that don't owe any money. And I'm going to tell you the reason for that, and that's very important. And I'm going to tell you that as I talk about food today. I had a class, a seminar up in Washington, D.C. at a Spotlight seminar in 1980. And at that seminar, I was telling people about the cycles, the 50-year Jubilee cycles. Now, this was new to most of those people. Most of those speakers were very well known nationally. And they were talking about the stock market, about gold going to $3,000 and $4,000 or $5,000 an ounce, and inflation going out the roof, and the price of land going to $10,000 an acre, and all these type of things. Well, that flew in the face of what I knew to be a fact. And so I told them that, in my opinion, gold had already peaked out. It was trading close to $850 at that time. And I told them that land had probably peaked out. And I told them that we were going to probably have a whole different set of rules to go by, because something very important happened in 1980. Then I explained to them this thing called usury. The simple way to understand usury, now we know the prohibition about usury, but there's a very practical reason for the prohibition of usury. If there's only $10 in existence, and that's all there is, just $10, and you lend it to someone under condition that he repay you $11, how can he repay you $11 if there's only $10 in existence? You see, it's crooked. Now, from the days of Babylon, it's been known to be crooked. Now, that is called usury. It's called the usury contract. When you lend someone $10 and get his agreement to repay $11, you got it. Especially when you trick him into putting up his house or his farm or his business as collateral. Now, to make a very long story short, there is an excess of $22 in IOUs coming due now for each $1 in the M1 money supply. There are going to be lots and lots and lots of people caught short. Very short indeed. Now, the contract reads this way. If on a certain day you don't come in with $11 to pay off your mortgage, you lose your collateral. Now, that's the contract. Now, it really doesn't make any difference why you don't get in there. If you don't get in there, you've got a problem. Now, one of my customers had a mortgage in an Ohio bank. To cover that mortgage, he had some treasury bills coming due on that very day. And all he had to do is go in and take the treasury money and take it from this account and put it over into that account and pay off his mortgage. However, on the due date, that bank was closed. and he couldn't get in there to make the exchange. He was technically in default. He was in default. Now, he went to him and he made all sorts of arrangements later because he, he was not an ordinary run-of-the-mind investor in that neighborhood. But if it had been a little fella, I am inclined to think they would have taken him to the cleaners. It is extremely dangerous to have any sort of mortgage outstanding at all. Owe no man anything but love. It is the law. If you love me, obey my commandments. Now, this 50-year Jubilee, the way I judge the Jubilee is this. In 1775, things were bad. They were very, very bad indeed, and prices were extremely low. Things were so bad that war was preferable to living the way they were living. With war, prices rise. Prices went on up until 1814, where they peaked. They started on down, and they reached bottom in 1832. They turned back up and went on up until 1864. They came on down and reached the bottom in 1896. They turned up again in 1920. They went down until 1932. They peaked out in 1980. And I don't think they will bottom until 1988 to 1992, sometime in that period of time. Now, I cannot foresee the future. Now, you know that. And any guesses I make in the future are just that, just guesses, because only God knows the future. But I'm trying to judge the future by the past. And I come from Virginia. Now, that is a test tube. We've been there for almost 400 years. Now, that doesn't compare with Germany or France. They've got history that goes back 2,000 years, recorded history, very good recorded history. But in modern finance, Virginia has 400 years of the best financial history you have ever seen. We have had 5 invasions of Virginia. We have fought people up one side of that state and down the other. We've had at least a dozen different kinds of currencies and monies. We've had panics. We've had booms. We've had busts. And I think we've learned something from it, something I think that you might find of interest. Now, we've got a cycle coming to a head. There are certain cycles that cross at certain times. Now, we're very close to that point in time, in my opinion. At the top of the cycle, when the prices are at their peak and they start down, that's called the peace phase. You can't get a war started, a major war started, if your life depended on it. You always got a war going on somewhere all the time. We've always had. But you can't get a good one going at that time. The peace phase, the war phase is over. The peace phase continues until you reach rock bottom. And when I mean rock bottom, and that's when I mean people are crying. That's when bankruptcies are everywhere, when the last mortgages call in, and people come screaming and hollering in to turn loose of the deed to their property. That's what I'm talking about in 1988, 1992. Now, the banking system, it works this way. It's designed this way. It is called calling in the net, and there's absolutely no excuse for a Christian to be caught in this net. They know better than to play with usury or to owe money. If you find somebody playing fast and loose with the law, well, maybe all of the curse of the law has been lifted. But let me tell you, you're going to pay the last dime, the last penalty. You violate the law. God put the law down to keep us safe and to keep us out of trouble. And the person who gets AIDS gets syphilis or gets some incurable disease that's going to pay the penalty, it's a law. God says, don't you do it, you do it, it's on your own head. You play around with usury, you play around with debt, it's on your own head. If you love me, keep my commandments, and you're going to pay the last tithe out of the whole thing. Now, during this period of time, we usually have a whopping good stock market because commodity prices, corn, wheat, rye, gold, silver, coal, all the rest, the prices come down, down, down. The manufacturer can buy cheap. He can manufacture his goods and sell and make the best profit he's made in years. Therefore, the stock market goes up, up, up. You have the farmers going bankrupt. You have land values going lower and lower and lower. And you have the stock market going up. Strange things happen during that period of time. But at a certain point in time, something triggers the stock market and everything goes down together. Now, that can be done artificially. The Fed can do it just like that, or something else can trigger it. Now, in 1837 and 1838, we had 2 drought years, back to back. And since most of the people were farmers in that day and time, it ruined the economy. It brought things right down to their knees fast. They tell me that 9/10 of the mercantile businesses in America were shut down. 9/10. Can you imagine that? I mean, we haven't seen times like that since, let's say, 1896. Of course, goodness knows, 1932 wasn't near that bad. Now, the thing that might ring in the end of this cycle might be this food crisis, this heat that we're feeling right this minute. Might be the culprit that collapses the rest of the cycle and brings it right down to the bottom. It might be the same thing as 1837 and 1838. I read on Friday the Dow Jones tape as it came in, and it said that we have a 15% wheat shortage already in the United States. And that's the Dow Jones broad tape. My friends in the Northwest tell me that already the wheat crops are 1/3 short in the Northwest. I know for a fact that the southern farmers in the Southland are ruined, totally ruined. In Virginia, I know half the crops are gone. The Northeast really doesn't have enough to mention too much at this time. Argentina, the great producer of grains and foods, has been devastated by one flood after another. South Africa and Argentina have been devastated by heat waves. Their amount of foodstuffs that they're going to produce this year are way down. In the past, about 30 to 40% of our total production is shipped overseas. Without our production, a great portion of the world would starve. Now, they forget to tell you that between 20 and 30% of our foodstuffs are imported from all over the world. The imports that are coming into the United States this year are going to be severely impacted. The extra food in other nations that are shipped to Europe, the Soviet Union, are going to be severely impacted this year. Now, I might be talking out of school. I might not know what I'm talking about, but I am quoting people who may well know what they're talking about. This year may be the beginning of a worldwide food shortage. Now, I hope you heard me loud and clear because the implications go far and wide. The foreigners, the worst strangers, You have two strangers in the Bible. The Ger strangers, G-E-R. A Ger stranger is a racial kinsman living under a different political subdivision. A Zwer stranger is a racial alien. The Zwer strangers of the world, if they don't get their food, may decide to come and take the food basket. The reason I've been told, now I've been talking to a school in Missouri, a group of farmers. They have different explanations for things that are happening than many of the people in Washington. And I want to go into some detail and some seriousness today so we're going to have a whole lot more fun tomorrow. But this is very important. The reason we have cold cycles on the way is biological. The heat that we're having right now is a side effect. Already, Iceland has lost more than half of its growing area. Canada, the growing area has come hundreds of miles south from the extreme areas that used to be planted. In the Soviet Union, many of the areas now being planted are being planted with a 120-day wheat, but they only have a 90-day growing season. It's shortened up that much. They're having extreme difficulty in Canada and the Soviet Union to meet the same quotas that they had just a few short years ago. Why? Why? Well, we have this great Rocky Mountain behind us, just covered with rocks. You wonder what in the world the good Lord had in mind when he created just a big pile of rocks back here, you know? And it is beautiful, I suppose, early in the morning. And, but you know, farmers for years and years have been taking the rocks out of the fields and digging them up and building rock walls around. The good Lord put those rocks in the field for a purpose. And this is what the purpose is. The other day, I was in Tom Jefferson's summer home called Poplar Forest, right near Lynchburg. And I went in the old kitchen. And right next to the fireplace, the old fireplace, was dust. Oh, it must have been a half an inch deep. And I could just scoop it up in my hand. That very, very fine dust, that is fertilizer. The rocks out in the field turn into this fine dust. And what happens when you mulch, when you have mulch there, decayed trees and animal matter and so forth, and water gets to it, and it hits this fine dust, it creates a sort of enzymes so that when a seed gets down there, it feeds the seed and it feeds the root. That is the fertilizer. You have to have a complete whole. You have to have the decayed organic matter as well as the rock dust. Now you can bag the rock dust and sell it for $2.50 a bag, or you can grind the rocks up here and you can go to a cement factory or cement plant. Now they use it in the making of cement, ground rock, you see, pulverized rock, and use that, and you have the very same cement that costs $2.50 a bag. Now, what happens and what has happened has been this. Everything is so different. Back in Virginia in the old days, our big problem with trees. The trees are everywhere. These ponderosa pines right here, nothing compared with some virgin timber I've seen in Virginia. Some of those virgin timber, some of those trees I saw in Virginia go up 5 and 6 times. You've seen the Pacific Northwest and some of those trees. That was similar to some of the trees we had in Virginia when we first got there. Our big problem was trees, and we'd cut those things down and we'd burn them, and we'd plow around those great big stumps until they finally rotted away. And through the years, we planted, we harvested a crop, we'd take the whole thing. We never returned the stalk. We'd never take the corn ear off and return the stalk to the ground. Heck no, we'd use that for cattle food or something else somewhere else. And we would take the whole thing off the land. And in Virginia, there are many, and that leaves nothing over a period of time. Many of our areas in Virginia are nothing but half sand. Half sand. But sand is too big. That's the fertilizer we want, but it has to be finer, much, much finer. And it has to have organic matter also. But we only got about 4 or 5 bushels of wheat to an acre. That's all we got in the old days when we had to cut it by hand. And we would bring in guano by the shiploads from South America, and we'd dig out peat out of the bottomlands, and we'd bring that up and throw it on the land, and oh, goodness gracious, our production would go up to, sometimes it went up to 20 to 30 bushels an acre, you know. Recently, they found a new way. They've learned that they can pour acid on the ground, and that acid goes down and melts the little fine granules of rock that are in the ground. And when they melt it, it turns into automatic fertilizer, instant fertilizer. So you can grow 50, 60, 70, and sometimes 80 bushels with this new fertilizer they're putting on the ground. But what happens when you put that fertilizer on the ground? It burns up the natural fertilizer in the ground. What's happening is the yields are decreasing year after year after year. Some areas are already down to 20 bushels a year. Something has to be done to replace this. When it's not replaced, we have a big, big problem. Now, this is the problem. We are getting fewer and fewer plants that are capable of taking the carbon dioxide out of the air. When the carbon dioxide remains in the air, the light hits the carbon dioxide and bounces off. It doesn't come through at the polar regions. The rest of the regions, the temperate regions, gets the sun directly, and boy, it is hotter than blue blazes. It's very hot at the equator. Water is condensed into clouds. The clouds go up to the poles. They fall as snow. The snow fields in the north are expanding rapidly. There are areas in Greenland where we used to use as emergency airfields during World War II, and we left airplanes there. Those airplanes are now between 30 and 40 feet under ice right at this moment. As the snow fields of the North Pole and the South Pole get larger and larger and larger, the colder air comes further and further south. The winters get erratic and colder in certain areas. The summers get blistering hot. Sure, we get rainfall, but all at the wrong times of the year. And the smoke that's put up by oil, automobiles, coal, and these type of things make this layer of carbon dioxide deeper and deeper and deeper. What we are getting ready to have is an ice age. That's what they're calling for, an ice age. And they say it's not far off. They're talking in terms of 5 and 6 years. They say the cure for the ice age is the ability to somehow marshal our resources and take these rocks, pulverize them into dust, and use whatever means necessary, air fleets, ground transportation, or whatever is necessary to cover the growing regions of America with this dust that has been used up. through the years. The pressure of the ice and snow at the polar regions is supposed to be exerting pressure on the earth, or pushing it together. When it pushes it together, it causes the earth's crust to crack, causing volcanoes. We're having more volcanoes now than ever before. Now, this is the story I've been told. I believe it makes a great deal of sense. We haven't had the 7th year of rest for our soil in years and years and years. This has to be attended to. I do feel that the usury, the breaking of the farmers off the farm, and I've been told that between 10 and 40% of the farmers will leave over the next 12 months. This alone, without the drought, will cause a great problem and will reduce production at least 10%. I feel strongly that the abuse of the land, the breaking of the farmers off of the land, are going to cause a food shortage. The food shortage should appear shortly. Preparations should be made by everyone in this room today. You've heard of the proper things that you should conserve and take care of to prepare for such events. Now, you should live like you're going to live forever. Prepare for a market break, because the market break should occur. Treasure bills and investments that incur no debt. Keep no surplus things. If you have 2 cars and don't need one, get rid of it. If you want some silver and gold, keep it by all means. Prepare for the worst. Clothing. Most people in this room probably don't have the proper footwear for winter. Food that can be stored and moved if necessary. Transportation, to get out of the way of harm in a hurry if necessary. Protection and shelter. The pup tents you see, I hate the thought of getting back in one of those tents and getting back into a sleeping bag and sleeping on the ground again. But I've done it in the past, and I can do it in the future, and it doesn't cost that much money. And if all the things come to pass that are anticipated as being possible, well, then we won't have much time to prepare. The time has run out on us. Now, there are many interesting things that I have tomorrow in great deal more detail. But I did want to prepare this part and tell you that we are on a time schedule. The time is quite short. We have to make preparations for these things we can make preparations for. And also remember this. God said we were going to win this next show, and we're going to come out, we'll be the winners, and our name is Israel, to rule with God, to rule as God. Thank you.
This program has been brought to you by America's Promise and is available on either VHS or beta cassettes. If you would like to be on our mailing list to receive catalogs of updated supporting literature, audio, or videotapes, write America's Promise, Post Office Box 30,000, Phoenix, Arizona 85046.